While there seems to be many who seem to want to say good riddance to 2016, I find myself feeling ambivalent. Because yes, for me this year was the year I swallowed the metaphorical red pill and had my awakening to the progressive regressive left. Now, the battle against the regressive left and feminism has been happening on YouTube for a couple of years now, mostly related to Gamergate, which I think was a blessing in disguise because it laid the groundwork for the skeptic, anti-SJW, whatever you want to call this community movement. But I think this year it went beyond YouTube. The SJWs and the resistance against them and political correctness via the election, it kind of broke the rest of the internet and it made its way into daily life. The meme wars, the tweet wars, the spiraling endless arguments in the Facebook comment sections. Families were being ripped apart, jobs were lost, relationships were tarnished, people were expelled. It felt like it was chaos. After 2016, politics has infiltrated our lives to the point that it's inescapable. After 2016, it's not a conspiracy anymore. It's undeniable that you can't trust your government. You can't trust the media. The progressive regressive agenda is very real and it's being implemented, and criticism of it is not acceptable. So here are 5 reasons why 2016 was a wake-up call, at least for me personally. Number 1, the media, including social media. When I say politics had inescapably infiltrated our lives, this is one reason why. Mantras of the progressive regressive left were endless, and once you're primed to it, you can't ignore it. And this year it felt like it was impossible to ignore. Every Huffington Post argument and article was trying to remind you of racism. Every Upworthy video was about the everyday turmoils that women go through for merely existing. BuzzFeed, MTV, SNL, The Daily Show, every talk show host, Hollywood celebrities, every freaking commercial. The lecturing, the virtue signaling was everywhere, and it was all being packaged and sold nicely and neatly to us. And then there was the news outlets, The Guardian, The New York Times, the BBC, CNN, and their biases were just so blatant. I mean, I get that the media has always been lying to us, but now it's like they weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Or even worse, these journalists genuinely think and believe this stuff. This is how they see the world. And I mean, if you've been paying attention to the Young Turks over this year, that may be the case. This refusal to even acknowledge the other side of the argument, that runs deep. Or maybe Alex Jones is right, and it's the powers that be that are trying to turn us against each other. I mean, this year also revealed the internet algorithm. We always knew that Facebook was selling our information to sell us crap, but finding out that not only Facebook, but Google and now YouTube, even Reddit, are trying to control the information you see and have access to, claiming that they are showing us the most relevant information, but in fact we're suppressing whatever they labeled as conservative news and prioritizing information that fit with their own political agenda, that's 1984 scary. And for those on YouTube, that was personal. Nevertheless, in 2016, we witnessed an extreme cognitive dissonance in the mainstream media, but we also watched the continued rise of alternative media in people like Alex Jones, Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Milo and Dave Rubin, and more. And whether you agree or disagree with them, they are growing every day, and that should give us hope. Number 2, the election. There was the time that I too thought that the idea of President Trump was a joke. But the singular bias that came from the regressive left, via the sources that I just highlighted, really pushed me over. I probably would have been much less resistant to Hillary if at least one of these media outlets had treated Hillary the way that they treated Trump. Every single thing that you could say about him, you could say about her. If Trump was a rapist, Hillary Clinton was married to one. If Trump was a liar, Hillary was pathological. Trump was caught on tape talking about grabbing women, she was caught on tape laughing about how she got off a child rapist that she knew was guilty. Trump used loopholes to get out of his taxes. Hillary Clinton gets away with breaking the law and then lying about it. I work in research and I have to go through confidentiality and privacy and security training every year, sometimes more than once. I would at minimum lose my job if I accidentally lost a USB with even encrypted data on it. And criminal charges would be set against me if I knowingly shared or even moved confidential data. There is no bigger sign of privilege when you can break the law and not be held accountable for it. And yet the progressive regressives refuse to even acknowledge this argument. I mean, there are people sitting in jail at this very moment who have committed lesser crimes than she has. And when they do address this, their argument is, so what? All politicians are corrupt. Why focus on her? She's still better than Trump. We let men get away with this stuff. It's 'cause she's a woman. And here's the thing. Fine, maybe that is the case. But the difference is, this time we know. This time the evidence is there. It's not just some conspiracy or presumption of guilt. WikiLeaks is proof. It's evidence. And yet, by making that claim, you are saying we should just accept it. We should just accept that it's a fact of life that there are corrupt politicians, and we should be okay with that. The lies, the cheating, the manipulation, the greed, the narcissism. Hillary Clinton co-starring WikiLeaks and Donald Trump made 2016 look like a badly written season of House of Cards. Number 3. Blame Russia. The reaction to the election. No matter how you personally felt about Trump, anyone with a little bit of critical thinking was able to understand that Trump's win was a rejection of political correctness and the SJW movement as a whole. And the reaction from the progressive regressives of Trump winning was bittersweet. I mean, we all have to admit that watching the left melt down and be in utter shock was enjoyable and maybe even rewarding. But then there was the protests, the false stories of attacks by Trump supporters, the actual attacks of Trump supporters, I mean, violence from both sides, the attempts to overthrow the Electoral College, and the pleas to the Electoral College after to save them, Jill Stein's crusade to recount and re-vote and re-whatever, the war on fake news, and the doubling down with the everything is racist, sexist, xenophobic narrative. But blaming Russia for hacking the election and for Trump winning, that really takes the cake. I mean, even if the WikiLeaks emails was Russia's doing, which WikiLeaks has said it was not, who cares? It doesn't negate the fact that there was something to hack in the first place. Are you going to blame the messenger? And now it's, but don't you want to know if Russia hacked our democracy? Seriously, shut up. Nobody has been talking about Russia since the Cold War, and when they were, it was the conservatives doing the fear-mongering about the threat of communism. This is serious refusal on the left to take any responsibility for what has happened. And now the Democrats are trying to make it seem like it was this conspiracy by Putin to infiltrate America and put Trump in power to do what exactly? Why now? Why Trump? What does Russia want?
Why? What are we gonna do tomorrow night?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Number 3. Campus culture. This year, we met Trigglypuff, Smugglypuff, and Ed Ward. Milo's attack at DePaul, white student harassed for having dreadlocks. BML protesting the Constitution as white supremacy and asking for segregation. Attempts to get professors fired over Halloween costumes and cultural appropriation. Grief counseling after Trump's win. Lauren Southern getting urine thrown at her. And Dr. Jordan Peterson's war on gender pronouns. All of that was this year. For me, Peterson was one of the most influential people in the movement this year. Obviously, Christina Hoff Sommers and Janice Fiamego and other professors have been standing up against the left for some time, and I don't think any of us would be here without them. But Peterson exploded this year, and for good reason. Firstly, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he came out against a specific bill, something that was tangible, real proof of how far things are going. The second was the outcry against him, how reasonable and patient he was trying to be, how hard he's been trying to have this conversation, and then being issued warning letters by the university, students claiming that he put their lives and safety at stake. I mean, it's one thing when it's Milo who is purposely trying to provoke, but when it's a professor of clinical psychology, someone whose job it is to treat people who struggle and suffer on a daily basis, and somehow he was the enemy and putting people in danger, that really proved to me that they would turn on anybody. But the real reason that I think he is and will continue to be influential in the coming years is because he knows his shit and he gives a shit about it. He has spent decades studying the human mind, human behavior, political ideology, history, philosophy, religion. He doesn't use talking points or argumentative tactics or manipulation to make his argument. He has real answers for real questions and has spent genuine time thinking about these issues. He is a man who chooses his words carefully because he understands the consequences of them, and yet he's still against political correctness. That should tell you everything. Number 5. Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government. Maybe it was changing the national anthem to make it gender neutral, or the praise of Fidel Castro. Maybe it was having a half-women cabinet, 'cause vagina, and then making them wait outside while he met with Islamist leaders. Or maybe it was just the double standard of people judging Trump for being a celebrity, while Justin Trudeau and his BFF Obama prance around doing photo shoots, talk show interviews, and trying to get in with the cool kids. But as someone who voted for the Liberal Party, including Trudeau, for almost every single election since I was eligible to vote, I think this year will be the last year that I really ever identify myself with the Liberal Party of Canada, any party of Canada, or just any ideology altogether. I mean, I think I've genuinely just given up as on identities as a whole. But I do think that Trudeau is just a symptom of what's wrong with government in Canada today and maybe in general. And I think for some time it's just been about politicians and so-called experts going to conferences and summits and meetings and talking about problems, claiming that the solution is throwing money at these problems by taxing people, and then really having no plan of implementation or evaluation. It's also really discouraging that people in research, their policy recommendations are often ignored. I mean, I even have a link below to Canada's health plan for 2017, and all of it is plan to invest, plan to develop, make sure requirements are met, which are obviously done through what? More money and more regulations. No details are provided, no backing up with what the latest research on what this given plan is and how it will work. No explanation on how each dollar or cent is going to be used and how that's going to translate into actual results. For example, in the food and nutrition section of the plan, the main concern is to initiate the development of regulatory mechanisms to eliminate industry-produced trans fat, reduce sodium in processed foods, and provide more information on added sugars and artificial dyes on food labels. Note the initiate development, as though this is not a system that should already be in place. But nowhere in the document did I see anything about addressing food security problems in Canada, where the family grocery bill is doubling every year and people are struggling to afford and access healthy food. And I don't mean access food that needs to get regulated for trans fats. I mean access to basic fruits, vegetables, meats, not the processed crap that most people are not even buying anymore. Because amazingly, if you educate people and let them know something is bad for them, they're able to take care of themselves. Now, public health promotion and to better inform Canadians is part of the plan too. But what good is it when healthy food and all food keeps getting more and more expensive? Of course, obviously we need a system to make sure that the foods that we eat are safe and that the labels on them are accurate. And I'm also tired of, but it's my tax dollars argument. But I mean, isn't it a little bit ironic that the left makes corporations the enemy when we can buy their products of free will, but we have no choice but to pay for the system that regulates them, while the real problem continues to get ignored? What we need in Canada right now is more variety and options for people to be able to help themselves without needing to go to the government in the first place, not more regulations. So before I finish off, I do want to acknowledge some of the things I may have missed, mostly because I really don't know enough about them. Brexit happened this year. There was a migrant crisis in Europe. Apparently a lot of celebrities died. There was a surge in violence, police shootings, and terrorism. And maybe, I don't know, I'm wrong about Russia. That being said, I also do feel the need to acknowledge that the battle against the regressive left or progressives or whatever isn't just on the government and the media. It's also people. It's people, often millennials, who are the ones demanding safe spaces and trigger warnings and political correctness and ultimately censorship. There are those who want to give up freedom for the illusion of safety and security. However, to deny that the government isn't powerful, that it isn't growing every single day, I really think that's something that we can no longer ignore after 2016. And I really do think that this year people on all sides stood up against the establishment and said that enough is enough. And we are lucky that we live in countries where our vote does matter. Nevertheless, I don't think we should have been talking about these things so much. Good government means that we aren't talking about them all the time because they don't have so much influence on our lives. So that was my list. To some of you, maybe this year wasn't a revelation. Maybe a bunch of you out there are screaming, I told you so. But I really do think there was a shift this year with the help of the internet. And I think this might all be a good thing. Maybe this is the next step in our human evolution, and we need to once and for all hash these issues out. And maybe it's time for us laypeople to step up and use these tools that we have at our fingertips and take part in the battle of ideas. Maybe we'll find solutions to ongoing problems and stop looking for our governments to solve them. Because guess what? Maybe we can do it better, or at least we can try. Unless they take the internet away from us, then we might be screwed. So, Happy New Year's, everyone. I welcome you 2017, and remember, only in chaos can we find stability.